What is up, everybody? I'm NoLucksGiven, and today we are going to be looking at Heracross and when it is good to use in the Ultra League. Now, we know that there's a lot of use for fighting-type Pokemon in the Ultra League. There's a lot of Pokemon, Registeel, Snorlax, that are weak to fighting-type damage. But why specifically Heracross? There's a lot of good fighting types or pseudo-fighting types in the Ultra League. Machamp, Lucario. If you want to use pseudo-fighting types, Obstagoon and Escavalier I would also include as counter users. But why is Heracross so good, or what separates it from these other Pokemon? And Heracross's bug type, obviously we know that bug type Pokemon can threaten Cresselia. Cresselia really has to shield Heracross's Megahorn, but it's more than that. It's actually the three resistances that bug type Pokemon have. The first is grass, and that's not a huge deal in the Ultra League. We already know that bug type Pokemon beat grass types, but the other big things are a resistance to both fighting type damage and ground type damage. So I wanted to take a look at some of my Heracross games around the 2600 rating and just show some examples of when to use Heracross in the Ultra League. For these games, I'm going to be leading with Registeel with Giratina as a safe switch, so still a pretty solid team in its own regards here. For the first game, we are up against Melmetal, and I'm going to go ahead and safe swap into that Giratina. I'd really like to line up my Heracross against my opponent's Melmetal, but if I just switch, we know that they are going to switch as well, so we will try to catch that matchup later. My opponent now switches into Granbull, so I'm going to fire off some Shadow Sneaks on this Granbull, and this is a pretty straightforward way to play this team. You safe switch into Giratina, which draws out their Charmer, and then you'll be able to finish off their Charmer with your Registeel, and then you'll have Heracross in the back, uncontested, hopefully, and with shields down. Now, Granbull is a pretty tough Pokemon because it is not really a Charmer, it's just a Fairy-type Pokemon. A lot of Granbulls are using Snarl now. We are going to be able to get both of Granbull's shields here, though, by baiting with a Dragon Claw and then firing off a Shadow Sneak. So this will get both of Granbull's shields. They will then switch into a Giratina of their own. So I'm going to go ahead and switch into a Registeel here from me. And if you'll think about what my opponent has left here, this still means that my opponent, yeah, they've got a little bit of a Granbull left over with a tiny bit of health, but they also now do not have, they have a Melmetal, which we should be able to line our Heracross up with if we play this battle right. So we don't really have to care about this Registeel. It will die to a Melmetal if we win this matchup, so not a huge deal here. And then once that happens, we'll be able to bring in the Heracross. So we will take a bunch of damage on our Registeel. It really doesn't matter if we have half of our health or a third of our health. Either way, it's going to die pretty shortly to a Melmetal, but I do want to get some energy on it, so that way they're not allowed to build up too much energy on their Melmetal, and they'll be forced to use a move pretty quickly here. So that's exactly what happens. They go ahead and just use a superpower to start things off in this battle. They're going to kill off my Registeel. I then go into my Heracross, and then they bring in Granbull. And honestly, I don't even have to shield this here. Heracross resists everything that Granbull can throw at it, so I'm actually just going to counter farm down a resisted Pokemon. This way, when Melmetal comes back in, I have a huge energy lead against it, and I just counter it down a little bit more before finishing it off with a close combat. I think that's a pretty great showcasing of Heracross there. Yeah, it's just a really good fighting type Pokemon. Nothing fancy. Just try to line it up against your opponent's Pokemon that are weak to fighting type damage. Here we have Obstagoon. Speaking of something weak to fighting type damage, Obstagoon has a double weakness to fighting type moves being a dark and normal type Pokemon. So we're going to go ahead and bait the Focus Blast here by firing off a Flash Cannon. That's going to get my opponent's first shield, and then we are trying to get their second shield here, and we should be able to get it without offering any shields of our own on these Night Slashes. And this is just the main strategy that we try to use with this team when possible. Registeel really draws out the shields from your opponent, pretty obviously. It's got some huge, hard-hitting moves, but so does Heracross. And Heracross is going to be able to come in here. We'll be able to shake off this Night Slash pretty effortlessly here, and then we are taking not very effective damage as well from this Obstagoon's fast move. So we're able to take down that Obstagoon super quick, and now we have a huge energy lead and a huge shield lead on our opponent. They bring in Swampert, which we also resist, but Swampert is mostly dealing or generating energy with its charge moves. So we're going to go ahead and fire that off on Swampert before switching to Giratina. Now their last Pokemon is Cresselia, and this is a little bit scary because we obviously don't want Cresselia to line up against Heracross. My opponent could have played this a little bit differently if we had a different fighting type Pokemon, but because we had Heracross, they were afraid of our Megahorn. So they had to go into Swampert first, hope to waste some of our energy before going into the Cresselia. However, now that we are here, Giratina against Cresselia with such a big energy lead, or I'm sorry, such a big shield lead, we will just be able to shield my opponent's Moonblasts, take out their Cresselia, and then take out their Swampert. But importantly, really important to notice, this was really only possible because my fighting type Pokemon also threatened Cresselia. We had that energy lead, and we just put our opponent in a really tough position, and I think this game, maybe more than any other game in this clip, without really showing off the strength of Heracross. I mean, we got to see it absolutely demolish that Obstagoon. And part of this series too, you know, I'm just going to be showcasing wins, and I'm just going to be showcasing things that Heracross is really good against. But part of what I want to showcase with this series, when to use, and I might even go back and relabel some of my older videos, some of these more basic run-throughs, a when to use kind of thing. Because when your opponent is using Obstagoon, Heracross is a really good Pokemon to use. We get a pretty good leading matchup here, Cresselia up against Registeel, so things are going good to start off the battle. But yeah, basically the idea of this series is if your meta looks similar to the meta that I am showcasing here in this video, then that means that Heracross might be a good choice for you. If your opponents don't seem to be playing the same Pokemon that my opponents are playing in this video, then you might want to shy away from Heracross. But in about the 2600s, this is what a lot of teams look like, and Heracross is pretty good. I actually have a friend that just hit rank 10 with Heracross, so Heracross is definitely really good in the Ultra League right now. I'm saying right now, but I know that by the time this video releases, the Ultra League is probably gone. But anyways, yeah, Registeel is able to get a good lead, and then again, we have an Obstagoon. So like I said, there's a lot of Obstagoon in the Ultra League right now. We're going to go ahead and shield this move from Obstagoon just in case it's a cross chop, but it is just a Night Slash. We should be able to get both of my opponent's shields, though, because we were willing to use one of ours. So we'll go ahead and use a Flash Cannon. The Obstagoon will shield, and then we are just going to try to get to another charge move for ourselves. So let's see, will this be a cross chop? This one is a cross chop, so that takes us down. We're only able to get one of their shields, but then we go into Heracross. That prompts a switch from them, and then I'm going to switch into a Giratina myself. Now, this is the kind of situation that I was saying is a little bit scary. We've now lost our Registeel, and we are up against a Charmer. This is a double Charmin team, and this can be a little bit tricky to play against, but here we are really just leaning on the strength of just how good Heracross is against an Obstagoon. So it really doesn't matter if we wind up taking a little bit of damage on the Heracross. We are going to be able to shield this Clefable, so that's not going to be a huge deal. Then my opponent is going to be able to bring in their Obstagoon here, though. And Obstagoon will immediately, or pretty quickly, rather, be able to get to a Night Slash, but Night Slash is resisted, so we are going to survive this Night Slash, and then I decide, you know what, I'll go for these close combats. We've got 2 of them. My opponent only has 1 shield, so we will be able to take them down. And it was super close here, but we are able to take down this Obstagoon and win the battle. That was a really close one, but Heracross is just so good against Obstagoon. It resists all 3 of its moves and can hit it back for doubly super effective damage. So if Obstagoon is giving you problems, try out Heracross. I know it's a regional, so not everybody has access to it. That's also part of the reason that I wanted to put this video together, is just to show off Heracross, because it is a regional and you might not be able to play with it yourself. In this battle, my opponent switches into Registeel, so I'm going to switch into Heracross from here. We were in a winning leading matchup, and I'm not going to go ahead and, or I'm going to go ahead and not shield this Flash Cannon. It does a decent amount of damage to Heracross, but I'm just going to build up some energy and then fire off a close combat. Generally with Heracross, you want to save the shields until after you have been debuffed. In this case, I know that my opponent's going to bring in Giratina after I am done with their Registeel, so I'm not in a super big position to want to kill this Registeel anytime soon. Giratina is really good against Heracross. So that's why we don't lead with Heracross, or why I don't lead with Heracross. All of its moves are resisted by Giratina, so that is something that you do have to know while playing Heracross, but we trade it for the Registeel. We got a little bit of damage onto the Giratina. It's not really going to be super helpful, but I think, you know, in this game at the very least, it's not a liability here, right? So we're just using Registeel to take out my opponent's Giratina, and then we're just going to hope that my Giratina is good against whatever Pokemon my opponent has in the back. And that's basically it. That's the whole matchup. So, like, I think there's decent odds that my opponent's final Pokemon is Swampert, and we are already up a shield, so we should definitely be able to take care of Swampert. Shouldn't be a huge problem here. And I'll even be able to bring in my Giratina and get in a little bit of energy. Turns out their last Pokemon is Meganium, so it really doesn't matter. Giratina is not going to have any problems against Meganium at all. Yeah, this isn't really that much of a Heracross game. Obviously, my Heracross would have been great against their Meganium, but I think the important thing to take away from this game is this was just a mediocre Heracross game, a mediocre use of Heracross, and that's fine. Heracross can just function as kind of a role filler. Kill their Registeel, deal a little bit of damage to their Giratina. Try not to get over-farmed by their Giratina if you can help it, especially if it's Giratina safe swap into Registeel. You know the Giratina can come back in and finish the Heracross off after that. But yeah, just played a solid role in the team and basically acted like a Swampert would have, with some more polarizing matchups in some other places. So if this team had a Swampert instead of a Heracross, my opponent would have switched to Registeel, I would have switched to Swampert, we would have taken out their Registeel, and then their Giratina would have taken out our Swampert. So this is basically the same thing, just with, you know, a slightly different looking Pokemon. We are eventually going to get their shields and win that matchup, though, regardless, and I think it's a pretty convincing win. That was really just winning the lead, but yeah, playing it solidly after that much. Next, our opponent is going to have a Poliwrath, and Poliwrath is a pretty scary Pokemon to be up against. Again, I'm going to safe swap into Giratina. This is going to draw out a Togekiss from my opponent. So this team looks pretty good, but we are able to play it basically how we want it here. We are drawing out their Togekiss, and then we will be able to go into our Registeel and take out the Togekiss, and then Heracross should have a pretty easy run of the things in the back half of the battle. So my opponent's just going to Charm Farm us down because they want to be able to Flamethrower our Registeel. So all of this is pretty straightforward. They're going to shield here on their Togekiss. I'm going to bring in Registeel, and then I'm going to shield on their Togekiss. and then I'm going to farm the Togekiss down, and I won't really take that much damage from its charm. So yeah, we'll just be able to farm this down. I should also be able to claim Poliwrath's shield here with this Focus Blast. So yeah, once I see that it is Poliwrath, I go for the Focus Blast. I'm going to claim their shield, and then they should be able to threaten us. Oh, they actually don't shield there. So I tried to switch into Heracross, a little bit of spoiler for what's about to happen. I am just going to shield this, and they actually bait me here. They baited me with an Ice Punch. So now I switch into Heracross, and now I actually catch the Dynamic Punch. So hey, it actually wound up working out pretty well for us. We eat the Dynamic Punch, which is not very effective because we are half bug type. And then they bring in Articuno, and this is pretty funny. Articuno is a flying type Pokemon, but it's also ice type, so it is weak. It's neutral to our fighting type damage. I just want to get a close combat out there, deal some damage to this Articuno. It finishes me off pretty easily with an Icy Wind, and then I'm going to go with a Zero Bubble Flash Cannon. This will hit Articuno, leave it with a sliver of health left so that I can farm it up. So I'm going to be able to throw some flash cannons on my opponent's Poliwrath, and they do have a shield, so they're going to be able to shield this first flash cannon from me. But as you can remember, we wasted all of their energy by switching into my Heracross. So they will be able to build to a Dynamic Punch eventually, and I'm still in the green, so I should be able to just barely survive this, and then fire off another Flash Cannon at their Poliwrath, and that'll take it out. So Heracross was kind of used as a sacrificial, not quite a sacrificial swap there, but to absorb a fighting type move's damage, which isn't something that you can do with all fighting type Pokemon. We've talked about a few of Heracross's strengths. Obviously, it does have some weaknesses as well. We've also shown it's not good against Charmers, and it's not good against Giratina. That's part of the reason that we are leading with Registeel with this team composition exactly. And I do really like this team composition for Heracross. There are some other ways to play it. I think you can swap out the Giratina for maybe a Giratina Origin form or a Cresselia, but you do probably want to back it up with some of these more expensive legendary type Pokemon. And I can understand that 2 legendaries and a regional is not quite everybody's bag. But Registeel will line up well against Giratina and line up well against Charmers. And then if they aren't playing one of those 2 things, you can switch into Giratina, draw those Pokemon out, and then deal with them with your Registeel, which then allows Heracross to carry you to victory. So that's like the basic strategy going on with this team. And like I said, if this team seems totally unreasonable for you to play, then I'm glad that I can showcase it here for you. So we are able to take out my opponent's Giratina, but we aren't able to get rid of either of their shields. They're going to farm me down a little bit with their Poliwrath, and then I'm going to use a Focus Blast to get Poliwrath basically half dead, so that's pretty good. They are just going to continue to Mud Slap us, and I actually get to a second Focus Blast against my opponent, but this Poliwrath is going to have a huge amount of energy here. So I'm not really sure what the play is. If I go into Giratina, they're basically going to kill my Giratina dead. They're just going to Ice Punch it into oblivion, but that's what I decided to go with here, and I'm just going to hope that my Heracross is good against their last Pokemon. So sometimes you just have to have faith in the Heracross, and that is exactly what we are doing in this battle. Here come the Ice Punches, and already our Giratina is about half dead, and when we go for a Dragon Claw, they switch into their Registeel. So that is going to be not very effective, but then we switch into our Heracross, and we got Heracross, and we are up a shield. So honestly, I am feeling pretty okay. If I just shield this Registeel, I should be able to basically take it out and put myself in a position where then I can also take out their Poliwrath as well. We are going to close combat on this Registeel, and this might draw a shield from our opponent. It does, because they basically had their charge move ready to go. But now I can shield this Flash Cannon from them, farm down their Registeel, and then I'll be able to fire off 2 close combats at their Poliwrath, but we don't even need that. 1 close combat is definitely going to be able to do it with how much health their Poliwrath has left. So I was ready to switch into Giratina there too to remove the debuff on my Heracross, but we didn't even need that. Heracross was able to clean it up for us there pretty easily. For the last battle in this video, we are finally going to get to see an Escavalier on the other side of the battlefield from us. So we are going to switch into Giratina, which is our safe swap Pokemon. My opponent actually has a pretty good punish here. They switch into Lapras, so that's a little bit of annoying because we'd also like to line up our Heracross against this Lapras, but that's just not how this is going to be able to play out. Now, the reason that I really like Heracross in an Escavalier metagame is Escavalier's 3 moves: Counter, Drill Run, and then whatever its bug type move is. Maybe it's also Megahorn. Heracross can resist all 3 of those moves while dealing neutral damage back to the Escavalier. So Heracross lines up pretty well against Escavalier. Our Giratina is going to deal a little bit more damage with these Dragon Claws before it perishes, but this Lapras decided to go for the full farm down against us here. So we actually get their Lapras pretty weak, so I just decide I'm going to bring in my Registeel. I'm okay if my Registeel takes damage. I just want to protect my Heracross. So here comes a Surf on my Registeel, and they are actually not going to get to a second Surf. So now my Registeel has a huge amount of energy. When I see the Escavalier come out, I switch into Heracross. This will allow me to eat up their Drill Run. It's not very effective, as I was talking about. And their last Pokemon is Registeel. So this switch makes a lot of sense from my opponent's perspective. They want to line up Escavalier against my Registeel, and they figure, okay, well then we might as well line up a Registeel against their Heracross. But my Heracross is just so good against their remaining 2 Pokemon that my opponent is really in a tough spot here. So we go for a close combat, and they're going to let their Registeel die. Then we go for another close combat, this time on their Escavalier, and they are going to go ahead and shield this one on their Escavalier. That's just too much damage. I just deal a little bit more damage with my Heracross on their Escavalier. I get farmed down, but that's actually okay. I am up a shield, so we know they're going to shield this Focus Blast. No reason to even bait. We can just shield both of their Drill Runs. Even though we gave them a little bit of energy, Heracross just got us so ahead in this matchup. So they should beat us to another Drill Run here, actually. Actually, we get to a Focus Blast, so maybe they just weren't firing it. Maybe they were going to try to counter farm us down or something, but we get to the Focus Blast and we finish it off. Obviously, that is a double Steel team, so that is pretty good for Heracross, but Escavalier isn't really a Steel-type Pokemon. Its Bug-type resistance, or its Bug-type also gives it a resistance to Fighting-type moves, so it takes neutral damage from Heracross. But if it's taking neutral damage and dealing not very effective damage, that actually puts the matchup into Heracross's favor. So Heracross is really good against all of the Escavaliers you see running around. It's obviously really good against the Registeels, and it is really, really good against the Obstagoons, as well as just being a pretty good, well-rounded Pokemon, and even scaring a Cresselia from time to time. So hopefully those were good examples of when to use Heracross, and you enjoyed this video. Like I said, I do have some other when to use videos on some Pokemon that aren't quite really labeled as such, but I think I will be going back and making a playlist of those. And you can also subscribe for future videos and more content like this in the future. That's going to be it though for me, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I'm NoLucksGiven. Peace!